So today's webinar is really focusing on the beginning steps of your GIS journey with the ArcGIS for Schools bundle. So today we're looking at setting up your school account and inviting your users. And whilst I won't be able to go through the process from beginning to end with you, I will definitely provide as much insight as possible around some of these things. So a little bit about me. My name is Jake Lovejoy, and I'm the Education Program Manager at ESRI Australia. I also happen to be a qualified secondary teacher in Queensland. My special teaching areas being history and English, so not geography, but as I'm sure you're aware, if you're a history teacher, you're often a geography teacher as well. So I have definitely taught geography in the junior grades from 7 to 10, haven't taught it in the senior grades. However, after working at ESRI Australia for I think a year and a bit now, I've had plenty of, I guess, exposure to the senior curriculum, at least in Queensland, as I've helped a range of schools and teachers deliver assessment tasks and implement GIS in their senior years. So a little bit about the professional. Actually, I will just point out here, my presentation, instead of it being on a PowerPoint, I thought it best that I actually showcase one of our ArcGIS applications. This application is called Story Maps. I like to refer to it as a PowerPoint, but better. So this presentation, this webinar's presentation, is actually in a story map, and if you want to access it after the webinar, I'd encourage you to copy this URL down, and you can view that at a later time as well. I'll also re-emphasize that at the end as well. So if you miss it now, that's all right. I'll give you time to copy it down at the end. So the purpose of today's webinar is really focused on supporting new schools to the program, new schools to their ArcGIS license, and helping them get up and running with their ArcGIS skills. So with that, we've designed a bit of a professional learning journey, and it goes for 10 weeks in duration to match the length of a school term. Designed to equip new schools or teachers like yourselves with an understanding of ArcGIS and developing the skills needed to use it. So what does that mean? What does it look like? Essentially, you're going to receive a weekly email from myself, and it contains links to professional development resources, so short 10 to 15-minute videos, or if you're like me and you don't really learn so much through the video tutorial, I've also got links to PDF instruction guides as well. But essentially every week we go a step further with our ArcGIS journey. So theoretically, if you do access the professional development resources each week and go through some of the activities in them, you'll naturally build your ArcGIS skills in what I think is quite a chronological approach to developing those skills. And then across those 10 weeks, we've also got some invitations to attend some onboarding webinars, the first being this one today, which is setting up your school's account and how to add users. I will point out, and I'll touch on this again briefly at the end, we have 2 more onboarding webinars coming up later in the term. So some ideas on how to introduce GIS into your school's curriculum at different year levels. I always enjoy this one. And then how I could potentially teach with GIS. So I'll take you kind of through a model lesson with a bit of a senior context behind it, where we can explore how to clean data, import it into the digital mapping software and style it like a Choropleth map, for instance, so it communicates meaning. So they're the other onboarding sessions that are available to you and are coming up. But also keep an eye out on our professional development page, as every term I do run a couple of webinars for the general education community that focus on a particular application or a particular skill that teachers might find useful. So for return to my story map, today I'm not going to click on this YouTube video. For some reason, sound doesn't come through on the video through the webinar platform, and that's a little bit beyond us. That's something that the webinar platform needs to develop, but no sound comes through on this. So if you do feel like you want a bit of a brief introduction as to what GIS actually is, it's about a minute and a half this video. You can watch that by accessing the story map too. Some flagship applications that I want to make you aware of, I guess immediately as teachers. I find that most teachers request to join or request a schools bundle because they've heard or seen other teachers using one of these three things. So Arcgis Online, I'll start with this one. It's, I guess, our premier application. It allows users like your students or like yourself to create interactive maps and add feature layers. And what we mean by feature layers is essentially data layers. Users are able to import their own data and style, analyze and manipulate it to identify patterns and anomalies. So I know that's a big one for if we're thinking about senior curriculum, the ability to import data for a data report. For instance, if I'm looking at malaria, having malaria rates across countries, I can actually bring that data in to my mapping software and then style it according to the data I have, for instance, total number of cases or total number of deaths. What else about Arcgis Online? It's cloud-based. I know that this is a big one for the IT team at schools. Cloud-based means that the IT team doesn't have to download any software onto student laptops or onto school desktops. It's as simple as typing in the URL or bookmarking the URL and then clicking on it, and your students can go for it via the website. It also means that when students save data, it's saved to a server as well, so they don't need to save it to their device or worry about storage space. The application is simple to navigate, making it an attractive option for teachers and students. It might seem daunting at first, but once you do understand where things are, it's quite easy to follow. And I will just point, I'm just going to take my session back to here because I have heard one teacher is having some trouble with some audio. So this is I guess for you won't be able to hear me, but I do want to point out that if you are not getting audio, double check your computer's audio output, or also try hotspotting your laptop from your mobile device, and hopefully that will help sort that issue out. Alrighty, our second application that I find teachers have often seen someone else use that has inspired them to reach out and get the program for themselves is Survey 123. It's a field application, so it supports data collection in the field. And this application allows users to create and design their own surveys and includes the capability to collect locational data. So what I mean by that is that I guess where we differ from SurveyMonkey. SurveyMonkey is a really great tool. You can still collect data if you want, whatever that looks like, but it doesn't geotag those responses. So if I was to design a survey around plant health and tree health, I could walk up to a tree and my first question would be the geotagging question. I click on, essentially it would be asking me, where is this tree located? I find its location, and then any information or any questions I answer about that tree, it's going to geotag that to that singular location. So from there, what makes it good? We can share our surveys with others easily. So if you don't want students designing your surveys, teachers can design the survey and simply provide it to their students via a URL that they access or a QR code which they can scan from their phone. And this application can be accessed online as well, so no need to download that software onto laptops, onto desktops. And the great thing is you can take it out into the field on smartphones, those surveys. Just got another question about the audio, so I will touch base on that. My understanding is that you can hear me, but on the EQ network, the webinar is blocked. So I am familiar with Education Queensland. My advice again would be that you need to hotspot your mobile device so that your laptop is actually accessing your mobile's internet rather than the EQ network, and then that should solve the issue, and you should be able to see the webinar presentation too. Cool. Getting back to it, story maps is I think probably the one that most teachers find exciting. They see another teacher using it, or they've maybe seen a cool example online. This is an example of a story map. It helps users to communicate a narrative through the combination of text, maps, and other visual media like videos and images. The application is able to incorporate the maps that you may have built in Arcgis Online, which is great for things like field reports. I know that there are several schools getting their students to submit their field reports via story maps, and it can, like I said, this is what it comes back down to for me. It's like a PowerPoint, but it's better. And I'll quickly show you, I guess. Oh no, I might show you one that I'm working on at the moment. So I'll just jump out of this particular story. I'll show you one that I'm working on at the moment. Hopefully this takes me to where I want it to. Not quite, that's all right. So I'm working on one for history. Like I said, my area is definitely history first, geography second. So I'm looking at building a story map around Hatshepsut at the moment. And I guess this could be used in Year 7 history if you're looking at ancient Egypt, or definitely in senior ancient history. But this is what I kind of mean by a PowerPoint, but better. I can have main headings or main topics at the top so that I can jump to. For example, I might want to jump to Hatshepsut's rise to power, and it will take me there. And I can have quite a lot of text, and please note this is just in its planning and development stage at the moment. I can have quite a lot of text here, and but I can also add a range of media on the side. So I could add a swipe map. I could embed an external website that I want included on my particular display here. I could add a map, or I can add quite simply an image or a YouTube video. And the great thing is I can all of a sudden change how that template looks on the fly. So I had text left, display right, and I swapped that over, and I'm slowly developing it, but hey, let's decide I wanted to change it up again. I could click the plus button, and instead of going with that sidecar kind of theme, I might swap to a slideshow. And then I've got that very PowerPointy feel anyway. So that's story maps, and what I find quite a lot of teachers are jumping on board with at the moment. I'll jump back to where we were. And I guess after having introduced some of those flagship applications, we get to what the crux of today's webinar is about. It's about setting up your school account. Unfortunately, I cannot go through and model this process for you. ESRI has a bit of a problem giving me a new license every time an onboarding webinar like this comes around, just for the sole purpose of displaying how to set it up. But I have developed what I think are quite solid resources around this this installation setting up process. So I will go through where to find them, but at this stage, you should have all received a couple of emails from me. The first one being a bit of a welcome to the program, and the second one being one from our client services team that has 3 clear steps on it. So if I enlarge this image just a bit, you should have received an email that looks something like step 1, create a new Arcgis Online account. Step 2, activate it. And step 3, link it to my ESRI. And we can demonstrate step 3 today. But as for step 1 and step 2, I don't have a new Arcgis account or an activation code that I can take you through that process. But it's very easy. It's essentially follow the bouncing ball. So once you click on that activation link, the next step is to choose by creating a new account, and then it's essentially prompts you to fill in information, and it will take you through that process. And by the time you finish that process, you will have finished step 1 and step 2 at the same time. My advice is it's best to act on this process quickly. I will point out that the activation code stays live for a while, but if you don't actually get around to activating your license, this activation code expires. So it is important that you do make it a priority in the next couple of weeks to get onto it. The other, I guess, advice is by activating the license quickly, it allows you to actually keep up with the professional learning journey, those weekly emails with links to resources, and helps you getting on that journey of developing your GIS skills. And it can seem daunting, but I've found that the longer you leave it, ultimately the more daunting it's going to get. And the reality is that as teachers, the curriculum is mandating that we use it. Maybe that's probably not the reason I would encourage you to use it, not because you're told to, but that is a reality that we are required to use it. There are better reasons for using it than just we're required, but we do need to be using it. So yeah, my advice is activate it quickly. I know that there are several schools from this onboarding group that haven't, and there's no shame in that. I know that it's term 2's just begun. We've hit the ground running. That's all good. I'm not trying to point fingers or anything, but my advice is to get started as quickly as possible. So from there, once you have created your account and activated your Arcgis Online subscription, step 3 is to link your account with My ESRI. And I get quite a few questions about, hey, what is My ESRI? Do I need to use it? You know what? 99% of the time, you will never visit My ESRI, but it is that one-stop shop that is essentially the administrative side of the account. So if you're working in tandem with your IT team at school, definitely invite them to get connected onto your school's My ESRI, because they will probably use it much more than you do. But it's a place where you can manage all aspects of your account, your relationship with ESRI Australia. So anything that might have to do with downloads, licensing, users, support cases, training records, you can access all this information on My ESRI. So let's have a closer look at what that is. There's the URL for you, but for today, I've got it open for us. So My ESRI looks like this. I need to point out from the get-go that it's different to Arcgis Online, which is the mapping software. They both use the same username and password once you've linked to My ESRI, but they're different websites. So if you want to go and build a map, Arcgis Online will have home, gallery, map, this kind of stuff across the top, whereas My ESRI doesn't have those options up the top. It's really about that administrative side of your account. So once I've logged into My ESRI, and I'll show you how to connect in just a second, what do I do here? Essentially, this is a really great place to just have a quick look at your account. So if I'm on the dashboard tab, which I am right now, I can have a look at some of the things that are happening with ArcGIS and ESRI at the moment. I don't find that too exciting most of the time, if I'm being honest, but the common questions I do. So if I click on common questions, if I have some basic questions about licensing, for instance, or permissions, or the downloads available on my account, I can simply click on these I guess topics, and there's a range of, I guess, predefined questions. How do I download ESRI software? That's a good one. And I can click that and it gives me a brief answer as to how to go about that. So I'm a big fan of the common questions, always a nice thing to check if you're having trouble with an aspect of your account. Otherwise, it's not going to let me do it because I'm logged into a staff account, but if you're a customer, which you are, you can ask a question via here, and someone will get in touch with you as well. The next tab along, My Profile, essentially is what it sounds like. So you can see your details there, the details that ESRI Australia has on file. If other teachers request to join My ESRI from your organization, you can manage them once you're set up. You can edit your language settings and so forth. And then My Organization is the school itself. So if I click on that, and please forgive me, we do have a teacher from Cairns. I thought it best that we just go with a school in this onboarding class today rather than a school that's not in it. And we're not going to see any details that aren't publicly available anyway. But on this side, on this particular tab, we have overview. So we've got our school email, a school address, sorry, and the school customer number. And that's not for, that doesn't really matter who sees that, so that's fine. But again, if we wanted to request permissions, if I was a teacher wanting to request permissions to this particular school, I would click on this and fill it out and then send a request, which I'm not going to do. Users, I'm not going to go into in case Cairns has activated its account, but users will show up with some email addresses, some phone numbers for ESRI staff to contact if needed. Transactions, so this is just a transaction of the school license you've received, and as you all know, it's free, so $0. Licensing, this tells you what license you have with ESRI Australia. So all of you will have the ArcGIS for Schools bundle, and it's the advanced educational term license, which allows you to, it doesn't mean you have to, but it gives you the option to download some of our desktop applications if you want to move beyond the cloud-based applications. And I find that under licensing, a really useful thing sometimes is to, on this left-hand side, just to go to Arcgis Online information, and we can see that, there we go, at this stage, Cairns hasn't activated their account, so I can see not activated. But once it has been activated, it will tell us some I guess statistics, how many users are on there, how many credits have been consumed, when it's activated, etc. Downloads tab. Again, we're not going to be able to see anything just yet because we haven't activated our account, but once you've activated your account, you will have some options to download some of our desktop applications and so forth. Training, support cases that may have been opened from our technical support team that we're supporting you in, and so forth. So I guess it is that administrative side of your account. Again, my encouragement would be to get your IT team involved so that they can sit in here and worry about this, and you can simply worry about the mapping. But how do I activate, or how do I join and connect my ESRI to my Arcgis Online school account? Great question. I have on our professional development page, as well as in the first email in the activation email you received, on our professional development page, under setting up your school's subscription, you have a step-by-step guide linking your ArcGIS subscription to My ESRI. And I've opened that for us here, and it's quite simple. It's only a 3-page document, but it takes you through that process from start to finish. But I'll show you quite briefly what that looks like from our side. So I've logged into my Arcgis Online account. If I wanted to, I could go and create a map. If I wanted to, I could go see all of the content I've created. If I've set up student groups, I could go and view these groups there. But today I want to go to organization. And this is where I would go to add teachers, add students as well. So we will go through that process today as well. But once I'm under organization, I want to head over to members. And right here is a list of all the members on my school subscription. And you could have up to 2,000 members as a part of the schools bundle that you're on. I only have 17, but for anyone that I wanted to enable My ESRI access to, I would simply find their name. So there's my name. I would go across to role, and next to role, we see the ellipsis icon, the 3 dots. If we click on that, you'll see that I've already got my ESRI access. So I would be disabling ESRI access if I wanted to take it away from me, which I don't. Training user shouldn't have it. So, oh, he does. I've got to choose someone that doesn't have it. Okay, so training user EDU 007 doesn't. So if I wanted, let's say that was another teacher or my IT staff, if I wanted to give them my ESRI access, I would click enable ESRI access. And once I've enabled ESRI access, all that user has to do once they're logged in is click on their name in the top right corner, and they will have an option there, third from the top, for my ESRI. And once they click on that, it essentially opens the my ESRI account. I'm not going to let it load because I've got it open here for us. And if you haven't yet connected your account, you would be presented with this screen. So this is the account you're trying to connect with. Evidently, it would be your school name, and you would go to the request permissions icon, and you would request, I think it chooses for you automatically what one it is, but it might be giving me this option because I have a couple of accounts, but you would be required to enter the organization description, so the school name, and tick the permissions you need. I always encourage teachers to just tick them all. And then I would always just go, this is so-and-so from Cairns SHS. I teach geography at the school and require access. And then hit send request, and that will come to me. That request will come to me. So I'll get, if you can send an email with it to me, that would be great, so I can remember to check this. But by sending requests, someone from ESRI Australia will check with me, hey, is this person meant to have access to this account? And I'll do that the first time. And once you have a member linked to the account, then it will be a matter for you. Next time someone requests permission, it won't come to me. It will go to you, and you will have to approve that permissions request. So I'm going to cancel that. But that's that process. Once you've done that and you've hit request permissions, it'll get sent to me, and I essentially say yes, that person is good to be added to the account, and you're done and dusted having connected to my ESRI. So it's quite easy. My encouragement would be really to go through this. It takes about 5 minutes, if that. So if I return to my story map and I scroll down a little bit, if you are copying this story map URL down, and I'll share that again at the end, you can simply click to that resource here as well. At this time, I do want to pause for just a second. I'm just going to go on mute for about 30 seconds and give you guys, if there is any questions, give you a chance to ask them, and I'll answer them now before proceeding to the next focus of this webinar, which is inviting users. So I'll give you about 30 seconds and then I'll get on my way again. I had one question in that time. That's great. The question was, will we get a copy of this webinar to go through at our own pace? Great question. The answer to that is yes. So a couple of days after this webinar, you'll receive a post-webinar email that literally all it has is a thanks for attending. Here's a link to the webinar, and that this webinar will just get uploaded to YouTube, and you can go back through and pause and play as you need. And I'll also make sure that I give you a chance to copy this URL down as well at the end, so that if you don't want to listen to the webinar but you want to click on some of the resources throughout this, you can. Otherwise, let's continue. Inviting users to your organization. I guess that's the next step. Once you've set your account up and it's activated, it's about getting either your teaching team online, or I know that a lot of teachers simply start with quite a small group, and that's usually their year 11s or their year 12 students, because we know that using GIS is, I guess, quite a central component to assessment in the senior geography curriculums. So getting those 5 to 15 students activated, or a couple of your key teachers up and running is always important. So a couple of things. The license you're on allows you to invite 2,000 users to your organization. Have I seen a school invite 2,000 users? No. But I have seen schools invite 300, 400, 500 users. And I guess my understanding, I haven't talked to these schools personally, but my understanding is when I see huge numbers like that, they're probably using a single sign-on. So the same username and password that a student would use to log onto the school's internet or a school laptop would be the same username and password they're using to get up and running in Arcgis Online. So if you do want it to be throughout the entire school, please reach out to me and I can give your IT team some further instructions on how to set the single sign-on up. But otherwise, we're going to go through the process of manually adding and inviting teachers or students. And of course, that 2,000 users is fluid. So as last year's year 12s leave, let's say 30 students leave, if you delete those users, it will free up 30 more spaces in that 2,000 again. So it's my encouragement to teachers is always to stay on top of the users on your account, definitely reviewing it either at the end of each semester or at the end of each year, depending on how geography runs at your school. But yeah, I know that sometimes we have to keep year 12 work for a certain amount of time, but once that time has expired, definitely moving those students out and freeing up those spaces again. And I guess the same goes with teachers as well. If a teacher leaves your school, you don't really want them to have administrator access to your school's account anymore and be able to view your students' work and your students' classes. It's really important that once a teacher leaves, you might, if it's an amicable leave, then you might give them a couple of weeks to organise transferring their content to another school's subscription, which is possible. But yeah, definitely not giving them administrative privileges once they have left your school. That's important to stay on top of as well. So how do I add teachers and students? Let's give it a try. Again, here's some resources that you can click on, but again, they're on our professional development page as well. So instead of setting up your school subscription this time, I would want to go to adding teachers and students. So there's solid resources on this page, and I will encourage you to bookmark it again at the end. But I want to add some teachers and students. I like to always start with the training template. So if I click on this template on our website, it will open up our resource center. So don't get freaked out if you see Media Valet. That's just the resource center. We host some resources online. And I'm just going to click the little cloud icon, which is the download icon, and that opens or downloads a CSV sheet, which is an Excel spreadsheet, a type of Excel spreadsheet. And I'm just going to expand all these columns for us. But essentially, this template means you don't have to go and build your own. I've kind of demonstrated what information needs to be included before we go and add students or add teachers. Could I do this process one at a time? Yes, I could, but that's going to be a lot more time consuming. I might want to add 6 or 7 students at once, if not 25. So we're assuming that today I'm going to be adding bulk students. So for this, I'm going to chuck in some dummy details. Let's go with a couple of fan favorites today. Minnie Mouse. Now I always keep the usernames quite simple, so it's easy to remember. And if I'm teaching on Education Queensland's email schools, then I know that my email address will look something like this. Whoops, not sure what they look like at other schools, but let's go with another one and go with Daffy Duck. And again, just chucking that information in and making sure everything is accurate. So that's just the student email address that's getting provided there. And I would simply just build this out. If I need more columns, it's quite simple to just keep inserting columns, rows, or deleting rows as I don't need them. But what I would encourage you to do is keep the password the same. This is a generic password, so once you set them up, it'll send them out an email invitation asking them to accept, or alternatively, you can share the password with them and they can enter it that way. But once they enter this password for the first time, it will prompt them to choose a new password. So it's just easy to leave it as it is. If you want to go with chocolate.12, that's fine too. User type, add everyone as GIS Professional Advanced. This gives them the most privileges, allows them to access the most tools without being able to see other people's accounts. So they won't be able to see other students' content. They're not going to be able to like click on a student story map and essentially rip it off for their own assessment. Same with publisher. So this is what we want to add our students as, GIS Professional Advanced and Publisher. But even if you're bringing in a teacher, I would add them as this as publisher here, and we can retrospectively give them more privileges, and I'll show you how to do that as well. But let's say I'm happy with those two. I'm not going to actually go and enter 17 students today. I want to point out these ones here as well. So I know some schools have concerns about privacy or they address privacy laws by following this kind of method, where they avoid personal student information like first names and last names and email addresses by setting everyone up as student 1, student 2, and giving them a generic username. And the great thing about it is I can just make up an email address. So software licensing at madeupschool.com. I can just give everyone the same email address. It just means that I'll have to tell each student their username and their password because they won't be able to receive an email invitation if I go with this method. Alternatively, I could provide my own email address as that email in case I need to recover a password, and that would be my advice as well. You don't want to be setting up a new generic account every time a student forgets their password. So it might be that you have a separate spreadsheet document that says, hey, student 1 is actually James Mackenzie, and student 2 is May Ivis. And then if they do come to you and go, I forgot my password, you can, your email can receive that password change option. So that's an alternative. I know that some schools simply just get student parents to sign a permission note saying, hey, this information will be housed in Arcgis Online servers. Please sign that you're consenting for this to occur. I do have a question at this stage. Do I mean add my personal work email? Yes, that's what I mean. So if you're setting up generic usernames for your students so that ArcGIS isn't hosting, actual first names and last names, that's fine. But I would encourage you to include your email address, your work email address for each of the generic students that you create. And that way, if they forget their password and they click on the forgot password button on the login screen, it will send an email to the email address against that student name, which will be you, and then you can reset it and tell them the new password, and then they can create their own again. So that's my advice there. But once I'm happy with all of my students, I've added as many as I want, I delete the excess rows and I essentially save that somewhere. And I'm just going to make a real big note for myself because I want to know that I can delete this later. You might name it Mrs. Smith's Year 8 Geography class, or whatever it happens to be. I'm just going to save it there, that's fine. And I'm happy with that. I can close that down, and I'm going to return to ArcGIS Online. So in this page, again, once we log in, it'll always take us to the home screen, which will look something like this. Mine will look a bit different to yours. Yours will have usually has a nice big strong image and the school's name across the middle of the page. But from here, we're going to organization. And once that loads, we want to head over to members in the blue banner across the top of the page. And from here, we're going up to the top left corner and we're selecting invite members. And it gives us a couple of options like I alluded to earlier. So I can add members without sending invitations. So if I was using my personal work email for 25 students' accounts, then I would need to choose this first option because I will be required to tell or inform each member of their username and password in class. Okay, so that would be the one you choose. If you're wanting members to receive an email notification, an email invitation, then you would select the second option as well. I never give my students the choice, that's just a pain, and often be on them as well. So we definitely want to choose the first or the second option, depending on how we're going about adding students. I'm going to add them via email today. The same process on our end is the same. It's just how the students get their information is different at the end. So I'm going to click next. If I was going with one person at a time, I would choose the new member option. But because I'm adding a whole class or multiple users, we've just saved a file. So we're going to choose new members from a file. And we're going to browse for that CSV file that I've just created, which will be in my OneDrive under test. There it is. I'm going to hit open, and you'll see that all of these fields have been green lighted. They've been ticked, they're good to go ahead. And if you recall, and I will just open it, those fields are the fields across the top of my spreadsheet. So email, first name, last name, username, password, etc. If I'm missing one of them, it'll show up as red. It won't let me go any further until I rectify that, which is why at the end of the day, I just encourage you to use the training template anyway. You know it's going to be good to go, and it saves you the hassle of having to build your own spreadsheet. Where did I go? Sorry, here I am. So I've got the green lights to go ahead, so I'm going to click next. And I can see my two users are here, Minnie Mouse and Daffy Duck. Happy with that. I'm going to click next, and it gives me now a chance to set my member properties. So I can give them some add-on licenses if interested. By default, you don't need to. If you just wanted your students to have access to things like story maps and Survey 123, maybe field maps, quick capture, Arcgis Online, you don't need to click on this stuff in here. And I would encourage you not to until you have a better understanding of Arcgis anyway. The reality is that schools don't need these add-on licenses, or very, very, very infrequently need them. If you had a group set up already, you might want this new list of students to go straight into a group. So instead of these group names being here, you might have a group name titled again, Mrs. Smith's Year 8 Geography class, and you could tick that, and then all the students you're adding in this batch would get added to that group automatically. Today I'm not going to do that. I'm going to hit cancel. Do I want my students to have access to my ESRI? No, I don't. But if I was adding a teacher or a couple of teachers or my IT staff, then I might check that. Today, again, students, I'm not going to. And I can set credit allocations. Sorry, excuse me. And what credits are, they're essentially like storage space, like megabytes. Having credits allows students to perform certain actions in Arcgis Online. I know that a lot of teachers, and this again will depend on what you as a school want to do, but I know that a lot of teachers in their senior school, so year 11 and 12, their senior students, they don't allocate a limit because they're using it quite a lot, especially around assessment times. However, if you are using it in your younger grades and you're adding a group of year 7s or 8s, we might definitely set an allocation. And that just means they can't run rampage creating 15 choropleth maps and 20 buffer zones and whatnot. Once they run out of credits, they'll need to ask you for more. So it's just setting that control there in case you do have some avid GIS users that want to access it in their own time and build their own maps in their own time. Just putting some controls around that. And if they do run out of 25, that's all right. You can, under the members tab, I'll show you where you can do it, but you can assign more credits. And then lastly, down the bottom of the page, settings. So who do you want to be able to see their account? My encouragement is that you stick with organization. That means only members of your school can see that person's account. Doesn't mean they can see the content in that account, but it means that Daffy Duck will be able to see Minnie Mouse as a user, which I think, there's potential reasons to need students to be able to see each other, so that's fine. But that just means organization means a school level. Don't click on everyone because we don't want our students being able to be seen by people that have an ArcGIS account that might work in the mining space, for instance. There's no need for that. So just making sure organization, it's always chosen as default, but always a good thing to double check. Language, again, speaks for itself. I'm gonna leave it as English, but I always change the number and date format. We want it Australian, and you can actually choose where you want students to end up when they log in. So once they log in, do you want them to appear on the home screen? Maybe you might want them to go straight to the groups screen once logging in, or maybe to their content. So all the maps that they may have created already. That's completely up to you. Might be that you want the map view to open straight away. I like home. It's a good place to start every time you log in, I find. But we've done that, we set our member properties, we hit next, and it gives us a confirmation and complete screen. So you can confirm all the details you've just selected. And because I'm sending email invitations out, I can personalize this email too. So, you might say, hey, this needs to be done by X date. Make sure you've set up your account and you've logged in once. We'll be checking this on in our next lesson. You can personalize that bit and give it a bit more instruction if you feel that's necessary. And then it's a matter of just hitting add members. And because of you won't have this warning that I'm getting. I'm on a different license to you, so I actually don't have 2,000 users. It'd be nice if I did, but I think I've been limited to 15. So you won't get this list, or you won't get this notification unless you hit 2,000 users and you're trying to add more from that. So I would have to go and delete them before I can send my invitations off. But I'll hit cancel. I'm not going to do that. Essentially, after hitting add members, it sends that that email off to them, and then from here you can manage your users a little bit more closely. So if I did, let's say, have added another teacher, but we add them as a publisher, that's when I would go in, find the teacher's name. So it's training user this time, edu005, and I would simply click on publisher and change that to administrator. And it's really important that we recognize that administrator I would only be giving to either teachers or your IT staff. Non-teaching staff, other than your IT team, don't need access to administrator. I mean, I'm sure if the principal asks you for it, you're going to give it to them, but other non-teaching staff won't need it. But definitely do not give your students it. But a teacher needs to be made an administrator if they want to be able to click on, let's say, training user 12 and see what groups they're in. He doesn't have anything. Or in this case, if I click on Sky Rogers, I'm an administrator, I can see they have 864 maps or story maps or surveys that they've created, and I can actually view all. So as a teacher, I have this oversight on my students. I can see where their maps are at. I can see where their story maps are in terms of development. So I guess it's a good way to keep tabs on how your students are progressing in an assessment task, for instance. I could just simply click on the map and open that map up and have a look at it. But we don't want students, again, plagiarizing off each other and whatnot, so that's why we set them at publisher. And then again, credits remaining. So as a student eats into their credits, 25 of 25, you can see I've got 23 of 25 down here. I can reset it and make changes there as well. And then if a student forgets their password, you just log into your account and you hit that reset password option here. And if you've invited them via email, it will send an email to their school email address. If you've used the generic information, then it will send an email to your work email address, and you will have to reset the password from your end and then give it to them verbally or on a piece of paper or something like that. And there's that manage credits button again. But that's essentially how to invite students and teachers. It is, again, a follow the bouncing ball process. You know, we can see that it essentially takes you step through step, and you just hit next once you're happy with the settings on each page, and then add members at the end. And then just important to remember, teachers need to be swapped from publisher to administrator from there. Otherwise, that's essentially all that I'd planned for today's webinar. At this stage, I do encourage you, we have about 5-7 minutes left. Whilst I'm showing you a couple of things on this back end of the webinar, if you do have a question, can you please ask it here so that in a couple of minutes time, I can have a look at the question box and respond to any that have come through. And whilst you're doing that, I will point out a couple of things. So first thing is that I would encourage you all to bookmark ESRI Australia's education website. So that's esriaustralia.com.au/GIS-for-schools, which is this page. And I know that all of you have found this page because you've all requested a free Arcgis Online account from me or from ESRI Australia. But it's just a really good place to, you know, every couple of weeks I'll update some fun news stories or resources on the front page. Evidently, I need to update the Easter egg hunt activity, but especially as beginners of ArcGIS, we've got learning materials that are directly related, directly linked to the curriculum. So if you're looking for an easy way to start, let's go to Year 7 and go to Geography. We've got livability in Australian cities, and I think this one looks at Ballarat as an example. Or if we're doing water, we can look at forms and availability, or water wars, you know, the scarcity of water, I think this one touches on, or the 2010 and 11 Queensland floods. If we go to Year 8, just as another quick example, stay with geography. Beach management, hotspots and how they created the Hawaiian Islands, how mountains are formed, plate tectonics, volcanoes. So there's quite a few resources that are directly related to what you would be teaching in class anyway. By clicking on one of these, so if I click on hotspots in the Hawaiian Islands, I'll open it in a new tab. You can see that it's actually a bit of a lesson plan for you. So it takes you through how to engage with the resource, and this green writing is teacher answers. If you want just students to work from this, they can essentially download this document, or you give them the link, or you print it out ahead of class. But by clicking the student worksheet link here, it prints out the whole, it gives you the worksheet, but without the nice green answers. And then to access the map itself, you always just look in this gray box at the top. If I click on that, sorry, it will open the map resource that goes along with this particular lesson. So hotspots in the Hawaiian Islands, and I've got some feature layers here. So there's the Hawaiian Islands, specific plate movement. If I turn my plate boundaries on, it'll make a bit more sense. So this is kind of the patterns that the plates are looking at the moment. I've chucked in a world volcanoes layer there just because, and then hotspot tracks. And when you use that in conjunction with the lesson plan, it'll make a lot more sense about how you unpack that for your students in a classroom. So that's one reason to bookmark the schools page. Another reason is our professional development resources. So this is what I will be drip feeding over the next 9 weeks now. Resources from this page that I think follow a natural progression of you developing your skills as a teacher. So you don't have to access them every week. But you know, if you do want to develop on your journey, it's important to, I know that you would know this, it's important to spend a little bit of time each week spending some time developing those skills. So if you're looking at how to use, you might want to be using story maps with your students now. Well, that's not going to come until week 8 of the emails. You can just click on story maps and there's a number of resources there ready to help you get started. Same with survey 1, 2, 3 and so forth. These first 5 are definitely for you guys, but there's no reason you can't share the bottom ones with your students. If you need your senior students to develop a survey, there's no reason you can't share these links with them and they can watch those videos for homework as well. And then also on this page, we have upcoming webinar opportunities as well. So we're all sitting in this one right now. In a couple of weeks, we'll have some new onboarding sessions. So you can see that these are the onboarding webinars. Every now and then, an extra title will pop up above this one and it will just have general webinar sessions, and there will be a couple of general webinar sessions coming up in I think it's week 6 and 7 or something like that. But this term's webinars that are open to the wider education audience are focusing on story maps and focusing on ArcGIS dashboards. So if that's something you might be interested in, just keep an eye out on that. And then we did have a question from someone in the audience earlier that, hey, if I want to go back and watch a past webinar, can I do that? Yes, you will receive an email with a link if you did register for a webinar, but alternatively, you can visit the site and we will make sure all of our past webinars are hosted here too. So it is a really great resource for teachers to just bookmark and keep ready to go. And as I said, there's lots of geography resources. I have been building history out a bit because I am a history teacher too. So keep that in mind that we do have some for other subjects as well. But otherwise, do I have any questions? I've had one question in this time. That's great. Will there be a weekly webinar from now on? There won't be. As I was just touching on, you can keep an eye out on that page and register for webinars as far in advance as you would like to, but the onboarding webinars, the next one won't happen till May 18. So a couple of weeks break between this one and that one. In finishing, if you do want some specific support, maybe you want to organize a Teams or a Zoom meeting to talk specifically about how you can introduce ArcGIS to a particular year level or assessment task, feel free to reach out to me at education@esriaustralia.com.au and we can organize a time to chat virtually, and I can definitely help you out in getting up and running. Otherwise, in finishing, I wanted to point out this story map URL link one more time. Feel free to copy that down, but it is 4:30. I really appreciate your time as teachers. I know that we as teachers are sometimes, so time is such a precious thing. So I do appreciate the time you spent this afternoon on listening to me, and hopefully you found it useful. I hope to see you in a couple of weeks' time on May the 18th for our next onboarding webinar, and have a great afternoon. Thank you.